Hey everybody, my name is truediltom. I'm here filling in for Independent Man today because he is actually away at the International Conference on Men's Issues, so he gave me the opportunity to fill in for him, and I'd like to thank you a lot, man. But that being said, let's get right into this episode of Under the Radar. So just the other day we had James Comey's testimony in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. What was meant to be the final nail in Trump's coffin turned out to be a complete waste of time for the Democrats. In fact, it made things worse for the Hillary supporters right in the wake of their most recent effort to deny the election results. On June 8th, James Comey, the former director of the FBI, testified in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and in addition, the anti-Trump mainstream media were very eager, claiming it was supposed to reveal some sort of smoking gun. The hearing was meant to finally produce the evidence the Democrats needed to impeach Trump, which of course is a delusion the left have convinced itself of to protect themselves from the reality that they lost, as the Democrats are still unable to accept the election results 7 months later. Now, for those who don't know, all of this conspiratorial talk of impeachment really hit its peak in May, when the New York Times reported on two of Comey's associates leaking information about a one-on-one dinner between Trump and Comey, in which the president asked for the then FBI director's loyalty. Now, how two associates of Comey would be able to recall a conversation they were not a part of in such detail and then independently leak it without any direction from Comey was beyond many of us, but the media celebrated it as an opportunity to bring forward the possibility of impeachment. While less than a week later, Comey himself leaked a memo to the New York Times that was again narrated to the news outlet through Comey's associates, thus leading to another New York Times article, this time alleging that President Trump asked Comey to leave Michael Flynn alone, the current national security advisor that the Democrats suspect most of colluding with Russia. Now, this was meant to be some sort of evidence that Trump was hiding knowledge of Russian collusion, despite Trump making similar statements in public fairly frequently. So, this, coupled with Comey's firing, got the Democrats very excited because, of course, he was fired for knowing too much about Russia rather than privately taking notes about his boss. Notes that he had never taken with any of the presidents before Trump and then deliberately leaking them to the press. Notes that he would also continue to take with him after being fired from his position, despite it being mandatory to leave all government property behind when one leaves office. And for anyone paying attention, this was just one incident in a plethora of other scandals where Comey cucked to the Democrats. But still, the Democratic Party members started discussing the idea of an impeachment clock, which was quasi-replicated by other clocks in the media such as CNN counting down to Comey's testimony, and Democrats such as Senator Richard Blumenthal suggesting that a situation similar to the Nixon administration was a very real possibility. So, moreover, Comey's testimony in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee would either falsify the conspiratorial, hysterical anti-Trump acceptance movement that had been brewing in the left, or it would demonstrate Trump was obstructing justice and put him on the path to impeachment. And would you guess what happened? Well, the testimony produced nothing that could suggest Trump was obstructing justice, and in fact, if anything, it suggested that it was the Democrats obstructing justice. Comey testified at the hearing that Obama's Attorney General Loretta Lynch attempted to pressure him to classify the investigation into Hillary Clinton as simply a matter rather than an investigation, which of course would be lying.
The decision to publicly go out with your results on the email, was your decision influenced by the Attorney General's tarmac meeting with the former President Bill Clinton?
Yes, in a ultimately conclusive way. That was the thing that capped it for me, that I had to do something separately to protect the credibility of the investigation, which meant both the FBI and the Justice Department.
Were there other things that contributed to that you can describe in an open session?
There were other things that contributed to that. One significant item I can't. I know the committee's been briefed on. There's been some public accounts of it, which are nonsense, but I understand the committee's been briefed on the classified facts. And probably the only other consideration that I guess I can talk about in open setting is that at one point the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me.
And Loretta Lynch, if you remember, was the person who called for blood on the streets regarding Trump's inauguration. Just last March, the Obama administration's former Attorney General made an impassioned video plea for more marching, blood, and death on the streets, a video that was later posted on the Facebook page of Senate Democrats as, quote, words of inspiration. So, Lynch was already an undesirable for the Democrats, and after the hearing, she isn't looking any better, one could say. In addition, the media's efforts to portray the president as being under FBI investigation, a narrative that has been pushed very frequently by the media, was one of the few subjects not touched on in any of the information leaked from the FBI over the last year, whether it be CNN reporting on leaks about financial matters, conversations between cabinet members, or the recent reality winners leaking classified information from the NSA to various media outlets. Information that was as significant as Rachel Maddow's leaking of Donald Trump's tax returns, I might add, in that it offered no reason to think Trump was colluding with the Russians, most of it being explained by details provided by the Vault 7 leak. But nonetheless, despite all the leaks, it seemed that one of the only things left hidden from the public was conveniently the fact that Trump was not actually being investigated by the FBI. Marco Rubio put it well during the hearing.
You know, this investigation is full of leaks left and right. I mean, we've learned more from the newspapers sometimes than we do from our open hearings, for sure. You ever wonder why, of all the things in this investigation, the only thing that's never been leaked is the fact that the president was not personally under investigation, despite the fact that both Democrats and Republicans and the leadership of Congress knew that and have known that for weeks?
So, as usual, the left have no evidence that Russia changed any votes during the election. They are buying into a narrative with ridiculously high levels of confidence when their only evidence consists of speculations and conspiracy theories about what goes on behind closed doors. They have gone batshit insane in their neuroticism, their emotional unwillingness to accept the reality that Trump is president. I mean, look, Hillary Clinton was the worst candidate you could run, probably one of the worst candidates in American political history, yet you ran her and you lost. You even ran her using the funds intended for Bernie Sanders, but you still lost. So just deal with it. Trump is going to be president for at least 4 years. There will be no blue wave, there will be no impeachment. Just be an adult and reconcile yourself with reality. And cooking up conspiracy theories with your deep state cronies isn't going to change that. But it seems many on the left are still holding on to the idea of impeachment. Here is one article from the dozens of leftist conspiracy theorists refusing to let this dead narrative lay down. This one from CBC News, in which the author constantly pimps the Russian collusion narrative, despite still having no evidence, just being giddy with excitement about the possible private conversations Trump may have had, and how any day now they might finally have some evidence for any of their conspiracies and the president might finally be impeached. Comey's testimony was the only thing they had, and now it's gone. What I predict will happen is the left will put the conspiracy on the back burner and go back to the tax returns or some other bullshit non-issue and let the Russia collusion myth linger in the background to provide some justification to how they lost such a massive battle in the culture war. But that being said, let's move on to the next article. This one is entitled, "Canada's New Law Lets Government Take Children Away If Parents Don't Accept Their Gender Identity." I mean, holy shit. This is clearly a massive step for the left in taking our freedoms away. I mean, it seems for Canada, even if you have no opinion on the transgender debate and just want your kids to be left out of it, they are not giving you that option. Your own children aren't even safe from their delusional gratification of mental deviancy. They are making transgenderism an issue for you whether you want to be left out of it or not. The article writes, quote, "A Canadian province has passed a law that gives rights to the government to take away children from families that don't accept their kids' chosen gender identity or gender expression. The Supporting Children, Youth and Families Act of 2017, also known as Bill 89, was passed in Ontario by a vote of 63 to 23, end quote. So it would seem that the Ontario government is happy to say some decisions are not to be made by children. It seems that drinking, smoking, gambling, body modification, all these things should be decisions reserved for adults. But somehow, children are perfectly responsible enough to make decisions on gender reassignment surgery, hormone replacement therapy, or irreversible, potentially invasive processes. And not only should children be able to make these choices, any parent who doesn't facilitate their child's choice to inject themselves with unnatural, potentially fatal levels of the other sex's hormones will have people banging their doors down, breaking into their homes to physically take their children away from them. The article continues, quote, "The old law used to allow parents to direct the child's education and religious upbringings. The new bill, however, amends such rights of the parents. It now emphasizes a child's identity and allows parents only to direct the child or young person's education and upbringing in accordance with the child's or young person's creed, community identity, and cultural identity," end quote. All of these being things I'm sure we all had an adequate understanding of when we were small children. But anyway, it continues. Ontario children and youth advocate Erwin Ellman celebrated the bill and said it signals a paradigm shift and creates a child-centered system of service with the commitment to anti-racism and children's rights. What the fuck does racism have to do with this? But the article continues, Jack Fonseca, a political strategist for Campaign Life Coalition, meanwhile criticized the law. Quote, "With the passage of Bill 89, we've entered an era of totalitarian power by the state, such as never witnessed before in Canada's history. Make no mistake, Bill 89 is a grave threat to Christians and all people of faith who have children, or who hope to grow their family through adoption," end quote. And Fonseca is exactly right. This is a practice of the left that dates back hundreds of years to eliminate the right to disagree with them. Because remember, the left fear competition of all sorts. They are staunch opponents of capitalism because they fear having to compete with others. They would rather comfortably pursue their social science degrees and live off government funding. So, nonetheless, just as they hate economic competition through opposing capitalism, they hate intellectual competition and thus oppose the marketplace of ideas. These ideas about toxic masculinity and biological egalitarianism were taught to children back in the Hungarian Soviet, as well as in a plethora of other leftist states. And just as in those instances, there is no way that people could believe there are no biological differences between the sexes through honest persuasion, as it is a fact that is not only more scientifically knowable than almost anything else, but is obvious in our day-to-day lives. There is no way they could implement this idea into a functioning civilization without the use of coercion, without relying on the government and legislation to force people to abide by their niche leftist ideology. But anyway, everyone, that's all from me. Again, this is truediltom filling in for Independent Man. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe. If you want to hear more from me, you can check out my channel. But again, thanks for watching and have a good one. Laters.